Hurricane and Storm Preparedness, a Best Practices Expert Panel Discussion. In this webinar, we'll discuss lessons learned and best practices for communication during severe weather events with our expert panelists. So now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. We'll start with Maureen DeTore from the Valley Hospital. Maureen McNamara DeTore is the Director of Telecommunications and Reception Services at the Valley Hospital in Ridgewood, New Jersey. She is responsible for managing the 24/7 telecommunications operations for the Valley Health System, as well as the call center operations for the largest hospital-based physicians answering service in New Jersey. Last year, Valley's call center handled nearly 1.3 million calls. Maureen has a Bachelor of Arts in Management and Marketing and a Master's of Science in Healthcare Management. Maureen is the chair of the Emergency Management Agency's Administration's Logistics Section Communication Branch, where her responsibilities include communicating with staff and physicians for all weather emergencies and any other Code 12 status incidents. And now I will turn it over to Maureen to briefly say some things about the Valley Hospital and the importance of hurricane prep for her.
Valley Hospital is located in Ridgewood, New Jersey, which is in the upper northwest corner of the state. And we are probably about 20 minutes away from New York City. We're affiliated with the NYU School of Medicine, New York Presbyterian, Columbia University, and we are located in a very, very residential area. So when Hurricane Sandy hit us, it was a little bit tougher for people to get to the hospital because of where we're located. A lot of downed trees, flooding, and some of the things that you probably wouldn't even think of happening unless you're in the middle of a disaster, which we were.
Great. Thank you so much, Maureen. So next, I'd like to introduce Tracy Smith from Nassau County, Florida. Tracy is the Emergency Preparedness Planner for Nassau County Emergency Management. Prior to starting in Nassau County, she was a regional planner for the Northeast Florida Regional Council in Jacksonville. There she managed over $1 million in interoperable communications projects, including training, exercise, and summits. During her tenure in Nassau County, Tracy has increased awareness and outreach to both county agencies and citizens. She trains individuals and departments on using Everbridge for internal communications and citizen outreach. She manages social media and updates plans and guidelines continuously to best standards for Nassau County to be prepared for all hazards. She recently served as interim director. Tracy received her BS in criminal justice with a minor in political science from the University of South Dakota and her master's in public administration from the University of North Florida. And now I will turn it over to Tracy to say a few words about Nassau County and the importance of hurricane prep for her.
Thank you. Nassau County is the first county that you enter into when you take I-95 into Florida. We are a coastal county, and we do have a barrier island. Along with that, the west side of our county is very rural. We do have limited evacuation routes, and these challenges are important for us to address to the community and our partnering agencies prior to hurricane season so that we can make sure everybody is aware of what we are facing.
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy. And next we have Ed Goldberg from Northeast Utilities. So Dr. Ed Goldberg, MBA, MSEE, CVCP, manages Northeast Utilities Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery Programs in Berlin, Connecticut. Ed served 10 years as IT manager at Millstone Nuclear Power Station, and he is a CVCP with more than 25 years IT and management experience. He served 4 terms as president of Connecticut ACP and is a popular conference speaker and published author. He is currently in his 2nd term as education director for the ACP Corporate Board. Ed has a BSEE and MBA, an advanced graduate certificate in computer communication networks, and a doctorate in management and organizational leadership. He became a professional engineer in 1986 and an amateur radio operator in 1976. Ed also serves as core faculty at Capella University. He mentors PhD learners and teaches and develops coursework. Ed taught MBA and IT coursework at Albertus Magnus College for 11 years. He has firsthand experience designing military computer systems, fire alarm control panels, web offset printing press accessories, and electrofinishing plating computerized controls. He has a patent for sub-ambient fluid circulation systems used in the printing industry. In addition to his role at Northeast Utilities, Ed is also representing our co-sponsor on this webinar, the Association of Contingency Planners, or ACP. So Ed, I want to invite you to say a few words about Northeast Utilities as well as the ACP.
Sure, thank you very much. And I am always happy to work with you and with Everbridge. We've worked together previously on ACP and Everbridge co-sponsored webinars like this one, and they always draw a good crowd, and they're always interesting, well received. Northeast Utilities is electric company that serves Connecticut Light and Power, as you see on the slide, Public Service in New Hampshire, Western Mass Electric, and NSTAR Electric, which is the eastern side of the state, the Boston area and Cape Cod and so forth, and also Yankee Gas and NSTAR Gas in those areas. We've got about 3.5 million customers, 3.6 million customers across the 3 states. Until 2 years ago, we didn't, or 3 years ago, we really didn't get very many hurricanes. We actually went about 25 years without one, and we knew it was coming. We always knew that would happen, and the longer you wait, at least up here in the Northeast, the bigger the trees get, the more overgrown they get, and despite your trimming efforts, you're still going to have a lot of damage, and we did. So we have lessons learned from that we've applied. And then, regrettably, we got to use those lessons learned a couple times in big storms, and it went very well, but not exactly what you want to do. I think that's it. I think that's what I'm starting with, Erin. ACP.
Great.
Yeah, let me just mention ACP briefly,
Absolutely.
and I know there's another slide on it afterwards. ACP is the Association of Contingency Planners. It's a professional organization. Continuity, disaster recovery, emergency management planning. It's a not-for-profit. It does wonderful networking for us, and it does really great education, which is why we're heavily involved in these kinds of webinars. And the one question I ask anybody is that, if you've got an organization that has any sort of contingency planning activity like those, who in your organization is the member? If someone, at least one person should be a member of ACP to be able to bring back the takeaways from the educational programs that are offered. It really is, it's true, nobody competes on the basis of preparedness. It's one of those things that we like to share. Hope that helps.
Great. Thank you so much, Ed. And finally, we'll be joined by Claudia, Vice President of Product Management here at Everbridge. Claudia has many years of experience in the technology industry and has held executive positions in product management, marketing, business development, and general management at companies ranging from startup to large global enterprises. So we're excited and honored to have all of our experts here with us today. It looks like we have a lot of good questions coming in, so just as a reminder, you can continue to submit those throughout, and I'll do my best to field them to our panelists. So Ed, I think we'll go back to you for our first question. Can you talk about what type of preparation your organization does for the upcoming hurricane season?
So what we do is probably typical of what many utilities do, which is, there's a season to hurricanes, and so that's a nice thing. Although the season may vary, and especially in recent years, the intensity at the edges of the season seems to be a little off kilter. You can usually plan that you're not going to get a hurricane in February in the Northeast, that type of thing. So it gives you some time to plan, to get ready for the upcoming season. And what we usually do is in the off season, we do lessons learned all the time, but we take all that and we do a very concerted, labor-intensive effort whereby we update our plants. We upgrade them, we update them, we keep improving them. And it's not just us, it's all utilities. It's also all our partners, so the public departments of public works and the state departments of emergency management and so forth all work together with us and other utilities to try and get prepared for when when these things happen. In the Northeast, it's not just hurricanes. It's also blizzards, and we've had our share of a few small tornadoes. We had a pretty violent microburst the night before last, and you know, we roll these plans. It almost becomes, regrettably, a routine activity for us. We also stock up, you know, the types of things that you do to have your supplies in place and so forth, and training, an extensive amount of training, and a lot of communication.
Great, thank you, Ed. And I know, you know, obviously since Maureen and Tracy are representing different industries, I'm going to open that question up to them as well. Maureen or Tracy, is there anything that you want to add about what your organizations do to prepare for hurricane season?
This is Maureen. Basically, the hospital, we always use the Everbridge system just for snowstorms or utility failures. And what we did now as a result of Hurricane Sandy to prepare for this was to look at all of the different departments, create an emergency agency administration so that we're able to meet on a quarterly basis, and then during the bad seasons, you know, going towards the winter or if there's an upcoming storm, we have ad hoc meetings that are going to happen, you know, based on whatever is transpiring out there with the weather. What we learned was that to be prepared, we have to make sure that we have not only enough stock as far as food and linens and everything for the patients, but we also have to make sure that we have enough so that we have to house the employees here so that we can feed as well as afford them someplace to rest. So buying cots, where are we going to put the cots, what type of, you know, accommodations we're going to have, and how many people need to be here to actually, you know, run a very successful hospital, since the patients can't leave because of the weather and some staff might not be able to come in. So we learned a lot, unfortunately, by being thrown to the wolves during Hurricane Sandy. You know, setting up a command center, meeting every 2 hours during the emergency, having the key departments in attendance like the pharmacy, the food and nutrition department, the linen department, so any departments you can think of. And if you think about a hospital, we're almost like a small contained city. So any kind of job you can think of outside in the real world, we actually have some version of it inside the hospital. You know, whether it's, do we have postal service? Yes, we have a mail room. Do we have restaurants? Yes. Do we have accommodations for people? I mean, anything you can think of. So we have to make sure that we maintain consistency in the care that we provide not only to the patients, but to also our employees during any kind of an emergency.
Great, thank you, Maureen. And Tracy, I know I haven't given you a chance yet, so I'm going to field that question, but I'm going to add one that's just come in through the panel. And I think this is really relevant to you from a county perspective. How is the public involved in your emergency preparedness planning?
You know, it's been very, the public has been very engaged this year. And not that they haven't in the past, but I think that we've done a lot more as far as outreach and making residents aware of what emergency management is and what we do. So we've actually been working with some of our, you know, we'll call them our private partners. And we've gone to, you know, association meetings. They've done training, they've done exercises, and we go and we represent emergency management and explain to them some of our concerns so that they understand what we're facing. And then, you know, they can ask us questions and let us know their concerns so that we can address those. And we can take that information to our next meeting so that we are, you know, are already aware of these. And it's just, you know, it's beginning these partnerships. It's really helping us as an agency and our residents.
Great, thank you, Tracy. And I'm actually going to keep you on the spot and add one more to that as well. Regarding communication to residents, how do you ensure that you have up-to-date contact information for citizens, particularly as we enter major storm season?
You know, prior to hurricane season, which starts, you know, this Sunday is June 1st, you know, we like to use traditional means such as the newspaper and the media, but since we're a small county, our newspapers are only published twice a week. We also have the large urban area of Jacksonville, who is the main media hub. So although we work with them a little bit, there's a lot going on in Jacksonville, and that's kind of their main concern. So we started using social media, and we use that quite frequently, but we do have a large population of older citizens who may not use the internet or social media. With Everbridge, we now have unlimited notification minutes, which we did not in the past. So we are exploring ways to utilize these unlimited minutes. We have discussed sending out a notification through the system, reminding people that it is the start of hurricane season and to update their information. We'd like to start doing this semi-annually, as we want our community to be prepared for all hazards, not just hurricanes. Every meeting and outreach event we've been attending, we take an online sign-up direction form we created, but also the paper form that residents can fill out and mail back to us to register for them. So if they don't have the internet or the means to register, they can fill out this paper application, and we will make sure they're registered for the system so that we have up-to-date contact information.
Great, wonderful. So Ed, I'm going to go back to you. How do you manage what is said to customers who call in before, during, and after a major storm? And then kind of following on that, how important are communications with customers related to major storms relative to their overall customer satisfaction?
Great questions. So first off, we have pre-scripted messages for, they're sort of boilerplate. It's probably not a fair characterization to say they're pre-scripted, because they have to be modified a little bit at the time that you use them. But they're pretty much ready to go in terms of, there's a storm, there's an outage, there's some other disruption, or there's going to be. Sometimes once in a while there are actually planned outages, but not very often. So the communication to employees on those types of things is completely separate from the way we do communicate with customers. So the first thing that's worthy of note is you have a certain number of people in your workforce that this is a somewhat routine activity, because if they're a lineman, for example, or an electrician, they're going to work longer hours, they're going to be working under adverse conditions. Those are things that they're used to, but it's not a routine thing. It happens basically in blocks here and there, and they have to be communicated with, regarding the challenges they're going to face, the type of safety issues and so forth. Then you have the rest of the workforce that works in the office, let's say, and during a storm, they're pressed into service in the field or in other roles. So everybody has another job, a storm job. And the communication with them isn't just about safety and so forth. It always includes that. But it's also about deployment, where they'll be going, and what kind of conditions they'll face. And in many of those cases, it's completely different than anything they've ever seen before. And so there's a bit of on-the-fly, on-the-job training that goes with that. They're obviously trained in advance for whatever specific role they have. So the communications to employees, it always revolves around safety, but it also revolves around the deployment, moving people around and so forth. Once the storm hits, it's very disruptive to communications in terms of lost cell towers, so cell phones may not work. We use satellite phones. We have our own radio system. We have our own paging system. They're all very robust systems. But during a storm, we may have people in an area that any one or more of those may not work. And so you kind of have to rely on something that's going to be able to try all the different ways to get at them. That's one of the values that we place in the Everbridge systems. We're able to do that pretty routinely, pretty easily during storms, during and after a storm. The communication messages are incredibly important. They're life and death to some extent. Teaching the general public about what's going to happen and how they can prepare for it, and what they should do to stay safe, it's paramount. And we have all sorts of media campaigns that roll out in advance of a hurricane, radio and television spots and newspaper ads, telling people, not to backfeed their generator, to stay 10 feet away from down wires, to have water ready. If they have medical need, there's a list of steps they have to take. There's also a list in each of the towns that maintains people on that list so that they can be taken care of. Not to put them in harm's way unnecessarily. We get involved in all of that. It's a very, very concerted effort. It's very well organized. Someone from the outside would look and see it as controlled mayhem, but in actuality, the things that are happening are exactly what are supposed to happen.
Great, wonderful. Thanks, Ed. And I'm going to open it up to our panel as well, if there's anything that they'd like to add on that question related to how you handle questions that come in from your populations during a storm. So let me know if anyone would like to add something to that.
We're involved very much with our marketing department, and this once again came about as a result of Hurricane Sandy when we felt that we just didn't have enough information out there for the public. We actually have created a standard website with links to all of emergency management, the Red Cross, any kind of an emergency agency that would be able to assist the public, because we felt that as we were starting to do this, we were updating it regularly with information, and we said, this is crazy. If we could just put their web link on it, they're updating it already, so why reinvent the wheel? So that's one of the things that we learned, to sort of think about the people, not necessarily the ones that are going to be coming into our hospital, but everyone who's out in the public. Who would they look to besides the police and any emergency management? They would look to their nearby hospital. And because we're in such a residential area, I mean, we literally have houses that I can see from my office window. They do rely on us. Sometimes they'll even come here during a power failure and just to sit in the lobby just so that they have electricity to charge their cell phones. So it's a very, very different environment now that we know that people are looking to us for something other than just health care.
Great, wonderful. And Maureen, we've gotten a great question for you about, was there anything in your experience with Hurricane Sandy that caught you by surprise?
Well, yeah, and actually it was part of a presentation that I did right after Hurricane Sandy with Everbridge. And if you think about, okay, I've got to get gas in my car because I have to get to work, say at the hospital or anywhere else. Here's nurses that have to come and report for critical care, 12-hour or longer shift based on what the need is going to be for staffing at the hospital. And all of a sudden they realize they only have a quarter of a tank of gas, and that's not going to get them to work. Now they go to pull into a gas station. The gas station is closed, not necessarily because they don't have gas, but because they don't have electricity to get the pumps working. Or you have the opposite, where they do have electricity, but the trucks couldn't get through because the streets weren't passable. So that was something that all of a sudden we said, wait a minute, how are we going to get employees here when nobody was really prepared for this? Or they've just been driving all over the place because they can't find a gas station that's open, and the trees are down, so they've got to go way out of their way to get to wherever they need to be. And we actually had to work out specific arrangements with local gas stations that would just give to Valley employees, showing your badge, and it was only open for Valley. So all of our emergency vehicles, all of our ambulances, anybody who needed to get into work that had the Valley ID was given, special privileges to be able to go into the specific gas station to fill up their tank. So that was something no one even thought of. And it worked out well. We were able to send out an Everbridge message saying to certain people, that we knew were considered the essential or critical people, that just to let you know that this specific gas station located at this address is now open for Valley employees only. So it was a huge, huge help to people.
Great, wonderful. So Tracy, I'm going to turn to you. I'm seeing a number of questions come in with a common thread. And I know you had mentioned briefly some of your resident demographics, but I know it's been asked, do you have any special population demographics in the county, particularly around functional needs or persons with disabilities? And how do you manage keeping them informed of incoming weather events and then also, how do you manage evacuation of those who may be mobility challenged?
I already mentioned that we have, a large elderly population. We have a very prominent retirement community, which is home to many seasonal residents. And, some of these are, as you mentioned, special or functional needs. And these individuals are on this barrier island. But we also have special and functional need residents on the west side of the county, which is, it's very rural. So, we have basically two, it's one system, Everbridge, but there are different ways to keep them notified of incoming weather events. We have the automatic weather alerts, so they can register these to, find out if they've got severe thunderstorm warnings or, tornado warnings, things they need to prepare for. But, for hurricanes, we've been working with these groups and, the healthcare fields, the caretakers, to make sure that they are registered for Everbridge. We have to do a special needs registration by Florida statute annually. So we send out at the beginning of the year, every year, an update to the registration program. And we send with them the paper registration form that I talked about so that they can register for the system or make any updates if they've, new address or new phone number. We, also get this information in the newspapers. Like I said, it's to the hospitals, to the assisted living facilities, to their caretakers. We've also started using Everbridge to create a notification group. So we are entering the special needs registrants into the system, into a group, and we will use this notification group prior to an evacuation decision being made to make them aware of the upcoming hazards, to make them aware that we have a tropical storm or hurricane coming in, and then they need to take preparedness, functions, but also do they need evacuation? And one of the functions of Everbridge is the polling. So we could actually use the polling function and contact them and find out whether or not they need evacuation assistance. And furthermore, do they need evacuation to the special needs shelter?
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much, Tracy. And now there's a question that's come in that asks about the communication systems of our panelists and specifically about GIS. And since I'm cheating and I know that all of you are using Everbridge, I'm actually going to turn that question over to Claudia to start with, and then I'll open it up to the panel if anyone wants to add something. But the question is specifically about, do communication systems interface with GIS systems for various capabilities during storm response?
Yes, absolutely. So we leverage a map-based capability for a number of things. First of all, we provide GIS capabilities that enable our customers to understand where all of their contacts are located. And we can understand and manage not only where a customer may work, what their work location is, but what their home location is as well. So for example, if you're trying to manage a situation like Valley Hospital where one area of the county is devastated, you can look to staff members who are located by role in another area and select those to see if they can come in to provide or cover for an emergency shift. We also enable you to manage for like Florida as an example, 911 data or any kind of data of that nature, and we couple that with data that can be entered, by the members themselves to say where their home address is, where their children go to school maybe, or where they work. So we know and have a record of where contacts may be at any point in time. We also leverage GIS information and couple that with other key information as well, such as the impact of weather events, hurricanes obviously, but any other kind of weather events, severe storms, etc. We also look to GIS to provide social media information, threat information with a partner we have called NC4, and also any information that's coming from frontline intelligence. So you may have either employees or citizens using our mobile application, and they can actually send in pictures of devastation or emergency situations, etc. So I know I just brushed the surface of our GIS capabilities, but the major point here is that they are an inherent part of the Everbridge system.
Great. Thank you so much, Claudia. And now I'll open it up to my panelists that want to add anything about GIS integration and location-based tracking.
A utility uses a lot of maps and a lot of, we use GIS in all of our vehicles, and we use, and we actually have some interactive maps that our town liaisons use with the town officials, so that within a town they can show them, they can tell them where our vehicles are at any given time and what they're doing. But that's as far as we've taken it so far. We know the capabilities there. We're just not on it yet.
Great. Thank you, Ed. And while I have you, I'm going to add on another question that's come in. Can you speak to, in recent years, have utilities made any significant changes in how they approach storm preparedness?
Oh, big time. So one of the, your greatest fear of when a storm is headed your way, if you know in advance that it is getting caught short of resources. The most scarce resource there is in the utility business are qualified field personnel, linemen and electricians. They just, to coin the phrase, they just don't grow on trees. There's only so many of them in the whole country. They're very, very highly trained. There's a specific qualifications they have to meet. They have to have a certain number of years of experience before they can work on certain high voltage equipment, and it's very dangerous work, and that's the reason for all that. When a storm hits, it's fine. If it affects Connecticut, for example, Connecticut's not all that physically big. We can have a lot of damage. We can bring in crews from all over the place and get things back up pretty quickly. The problem is that we don't know where the storm's going to hit. When there's a hurricane coming at the East Coast, like Sandy, everybody from Florida to Maine was holding on to their crews because they didn't know where it would go. And then once it hit, you poor folks down in Jersey, but we got it too. We had neighborhoods washed away in Connecticut. We were on the northern end of it, and it went down further south of Jersey. But then the folks that were outside of that, the strike zone, then they released their crews. And at that point, in some cases, it's never too late, but it certainly puts a dent in your plans as far as getting people there ahead of time, pre-stationing people, and so forth. There's always these resource issues, and it's been improved dramatically, not just by individual utilities, but working together. They've put together a national response framework through one of the organizations that's big in this, Edison Electric Institute. They've put that together, and they basically made it so that they can better focus the resources where they need to go when they need them on a mutual assistance basis. So it's not one-off. It's not competition for resources so much as it's cooperation to just get everybody back as soon as we can. That's probably the biggest change I've seen, yeah.
And just to tap on to what Ed is saying, it's definitely something that we noticed down here in New Jersey, was that when obviously other areas realized that they weren't hit as hard or they were able to recoup quicker, there were actually trucks we would see up here in, we're known for all of our big shopping malls, that in the shopping malls that had absolutely no electricity, you would see all these utility trucks from Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all these different areas that just came basically to our rescue. So definitely the linemen were definitely in tune with what was going on and where they were needed most.
It's the circus comes to town. We do the same thing. We sent our crews down to New Jersey and New York, Long Island, when the storm was, when we had gotten ours under control. We weren't done, but we were able to release some crews.
Great, thank you both for that. So Tracy, I'm going to go back to you for a moment because I know I've seen this come in a couple times. I know you mentioned the unique geography of Nassau County and the limited evacuation routes. Can you talk about how you balance giving residents enough advance notice of an event with creating unnecessary panic around a weather event that potentially doesn't materialize?
This will always be a challenge for us. It's been 50 years since the last hurricane in Northeast Florida. We've had some tropical storms, but at this point, I believe a lot of people are storm updates, storm tracks when they are thousands of miles away. A lot of residents won't even realize that there is a storm out in the Atlantic because it's sunny out. They want to be at the beach. They want to be at the parks. So, we'll be monitoring these. We'll be putting some updates on our website and on social media. But once it gets to the point where there's a pretty good certainty that the track would come through, Nassau County, or at least Nassau County would be affected by some of the outer bands with wind and rain, we would encourage those that have the means to evacuate to do so as early as possible as a safety measure. We're certainly going to start using Everbridge to send out messages that it appears the storm track is heading our way, and once our executive policy group makes the determination that we need to evacuate our barrier islands and the category evacuation zones, we will again use the notification system to notify residents. We've actually received new data to reconfigure our evacuation zones, and that's new this year, so we've been advertising that, but some people are just unaware of that. A great feature about Everbridge is the mapping or the zip code, kind of the GIS feature that we can use to notify certain areas that they are being evacuated. We can send either map a neighborhood or just the island or an area around a road that floods to notify them that their area is being evacuated. So rather than sending this notification out to the entire county, because they may not be in an evacuation zone, then we can notify them using that instead of getting that panic from those who don't need to evacuate. Another thing I wanted to mention is, an item we experience every time we have, a storm is that, we get calls from residents saying that, our bridge, we have one way basically on and off the island, and it never fails that there are rumors that the bridge is going to close at such and such time. We actually, believe it or not, had a winter storm warning this past December, and of course we received multiple calls on the bridge. So we used Everbridge to send out a notification alerting residents that the bridge is not going to be closed. One lesson learned from this is, it's great that you can use a local phone number when you send out notifications because people will actually, answer the phone calls because it's not an 800 number. But we learned that doing that, a lot of people called back because they missed the phone call, they had a voicemail. So in the future, when we send out a notification, we'll have either volunteers dedicated to answering phones to let them know what the message said, or we'll have it the number where it goes to an automatic message saying you received this phone call and here is what the message was.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much, Tracy. So there's another question that seems to be coming up from quite a few of our audience members. And this is specific to infrastructure damage and how that impacts communications. So I'm actually going to open that up to Claudia first. to talk about it from a technology standpoint, and then I want to field it to our panelists if anyone has some real-life experience they'd like to speak to. So, Claudia?
Yeah, so during any kind of an event, especially a weather event like a hurricane, and Ed mentioned this, a number of people mentioned this, infrastructure becomes damaged so that, oftentimes communication vehicles are, unavailable. During Hurricane Sandy, landlines started going down early on. So the best way to prepare for communications is to have multiple contact methods or paths for all of your constituents, so that if you can't reach them on a landline, maybe the cell towers are still working and you can reach them via, mobile or SMS or email, etc. So, the message is always have multiple contact paths available and ready for use and well understood, so that you can be flexible in the time of an emergency.
Great, thank you. So our panelists, Ed, Maureen, or Tracy, is there anything you want to add about your experiences having gone through some storms in your area?
Just by coincidence, actually it was about 4 days before we actually heard that the hurricane was on its way, we wanted to do a test of the Everbridge system just to see what the results would be as far as response rate from all of our employees. And we found out there were a lot of, based on the unbelievable reports that we can actually get from Everbridge, that there were a lot of people who were unreachable. So we were able to actually gather that information, contact the managers of those particular people to say, you need to get this information to that employee to have them update their contact information. And since Hurricane Sandy, because we realized how essential Everbridge is as such a communication tool, as part of our annual performance evaluation, each employee has to actually update their contact information in Everbridge, either edit it or just confirm that the information is correct. We choose all the different contacts that are in there as far as how we send out an emergency, just like Claudia was saying. So in the event that there is no power and they don't have a house phone, or their answering machine has no power, or whatever device is not able to work as a result of a utility failure, we're able to make sure that their email, their phone, SMS, anything we can think of, we send it out, with the exception of sending it to office phones, because we don't want to clog up our circuits for incoming calls. For these type of calls, we want to keep it open for the public and anyone looking for health care.
Great. Ed or Tracy, anything that you would like to add to that?
Sure. On a different side of that, I'd like to add that, communications. If we have communication failures on our side, we have a redundancy built in. We have generators, but we have a great group of volunteers. And you may remember from the beginning, Ed is not Nassau County's group, but an amateur radio, and they can establish communications using satellite and other backup communication ways to get things back up and running. So, we hope that during the storm, a lot of our residents have evacuated. So we may not have the issue of being able to communicate with them, because hopefully they're somewhere where, they don't have cell tower issues and they don't have, email and internet failures. So we have that backup communication so that we can still send out those notifications to let residents know that this is what's going on, that we're doing re-entry. So, there are ways that we will be able to use Everbridge regardless of, what's going on in our community.
Great, wonderful.
And we obviously put a lot into having multiple communication paths. We can't rely on ham radio because it's technically ham radio is non-commercial, and we're a commercial entity, and really our core business is keeping the lights on. So we really wouldn't be permitted to use their services other than if there was a unique life safety instance or something. We're a commercial entity. You can't use ham radio. But we have our own radio system. It's pretty robust. We have our own paging system that's robust. It doesn't rely on satellites and so forth. And then we have satellite phones, and then we have cell phones, and then within the EOCs, we have a lot of EOCs between us and each of the towns, and then the different regions across Connecticut. There's radio systems there that tie to each other. And during Irene back in 2011, and then the October snowstorm, I think some called it Alfred, we lost lots of communication. A lot of cell towers were down. There was a tremendous amount of damage. There was almost no tree in the area where the snow was that wasn't broken. And if we didn't have the other means of communicating, we were baked. I mean, you really, what ends up happening is every time a line crew finishes a job, they would have to drive all the way back to the area work center to get their papers for the next order instead of just sending them on to the next place to work. And the same was true for all of our other operations in the field. So it would pretty much double the length of the outage. And, you know, it's just my estimate right now. I'm just kind of making that up. But it would be a huge handicap to have to communicate by driving, you know, from place to place to get information. So the things we take for granted, when they go away, you have to have some other way of communicating. And having a centralized way of tapping into all those, like, you know, a database that exists in a system that's not hosted on your own facilities, it's priceless. That's where we saw the value. When we used Everbridge, we used it extensively during those storms, and we continue to do so to this day.
Wonderful. So I have a question, or actually it's a few questions that have come in, so I'm going to field it to the entire panel. Ed, why don't I start with you? Can you talk about social media and what role, if any, it plays in your hurricane preparedness and communications?
It's, you know, it's huge, and it went from 0 to 60 in just a few years. We have a substantial communication department, you know, not just corporate communications, but public relations and community relations, and folks that communicate to the you know, all different stakeholders that a utility has. And there's people that are dedicated to not just monitoring social media, but using it as a tool. We tweet restoration progress. During that winter snowstorm, the most popular, well, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but on the front page of, I think, the entertainment section in USA Today, I think every week they put a list of the top 5 websites, the ones that got the most hits for the week. And the Connecticut Light and Power outage map was #1 for the week around October, Halloween in 2011. Not something that we ever planned on or wanted, but that shows you how eager people are to pull information during an outage. For any number of reasons. They have to make plans. They have to decide whether they're going to go and move, you know, with great inconvenience to another area if the power's not going to be on for a few days, or if it's going to come back tomorrow, we'll stay here for another day. Those types of decisions are very important to anybody that uses energy, and trying to get accurate information to folks during one of these events, very difficult. Social media is invaluable for that. It's very helpful. So you post updates on restoration progress and so forth. Very, very powerful. We use it a lot, and so does the media, and so do individuals, and it's just, that's where the activity is now.
Great. So Maureen, I'm going to field that same question to you. What role, if any, does social media play in your hurricane prep and communication?
Well, our marketing department has, you know, recently, like I said, as a result of Hurricane Sandy again, realized how important it was not to just have people having to call the main hospital number to ask what's going on. Am I going to be scheduled for my surgical procedure? What am I supposed to do? I mean, we obviously would send out information to anyone with elective surgeries, or if we had a problem in the OR with utilities, to say that the surgery was being canceled using the Everbridge system. But as far as the social media with the public, we have, you know, on Twitter and on Facebook and any other social media you can think of, Valley has a page. And if you are a member of that page, you will receive information, or you can actually go in and you can find it. And we used it, like I said before, with like special links, so that if someone needed help for their elderly parent who lived 3 counties away and they couldn't get to them, do they have means to have the OEM or the local emergency teams respond to the parent, or the fire department, or the Red Cross, things like that. So, and also we had a lot of things that involved highways, and the New Jersey government provides websites to and links to all the different areas based on what roads were closed, what was passable, what was the detour, which way were you going to go. So we found it very, very valuable to use existing websites for very, very specific sites that we didn't have to update regularly. We just relied on them to update theirs, and it became a very, very popular thing that we will continue forever.
Great. And Tracy, I'll field that to you as well. I know you touched on social media, but is there anything you'd like to add about how it's used in your hurricane preparation?
Yes, it's social media for us is great to use, more, well, definitely during events, but day to day for preparedness. It's so easy to get on there and say, here's a website to make a plan, or here's a preparedness tip. We follow a lot of our, the state agencies, so, it's as easy as sharing or retweeting that information, make sure you know this. So, it's great to make sure that to use to get information out to the community to know what they need to do to be prepared for disaster, and to be aware if something is, heading our way. Ed alluded to basically, rumor control, and it's another great tool to use when you're monitoring for the storm is, what are they saying is going on in the county? We can have volunteers in here monitoring that. So, if somebody may say this person is stranded here, or this is going on here, we can have our first responders check that out. We can communicate with them. We may be hearing something again, like I'll go back to the bridge is closed, so we can respond to that person individually that the bridge isn't closed, and then it's a factor to us. All right, this is getting out there. We need to send out a notification that the bridge isn't closed.
Great. And Claudia, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think just obviously it's great that everyone's using social media to communicate out, and I think Everbridge can assist in that to automate some of that communication to social media vehicles, etc. The other key thing too is that you can also leverage social media to understand what's happening from a situational awareness perspective. So you can look at what people are saying about different areas and pictures that they're posting in the aftermath of a storm. So, for example, to be able to filter on, hashtag, Hurricane Sandy, for example, and see, wow, here's where, there's the most damage, maybe even damage you didn't know about. Maybe, that's where you could see for Hurricane Sandy where all the gas lines were. People were taking pictures of those gas lines, and they were communicating on social media around where gas was available, where it wasn't available. So there are a variety of ways in which you can leverage that situational intelligence to better inform your own actions and actions that you need to take, or further communications that you might want to do to the general public or your employees, etc.
Great. Thank you so much, Claudia. So we have just a few minutes left. In the interest of time, I think we'll field one more question to our panel. So I think what I'd like to ask, and I'll start with you again, just if there's anything that you think the audience should take away in terms of hurricane preparation based on your learning and your experience.
Who did you say was going first?
That's you.
Okay. I missed it. It glitched. I would say practice. We spend a lot of time making the groups real nice in Everbridge and making things, writing procedures and telling people about it. And the day that I always use the term, we lit it off. We set off a message. all kinds of problems. And I'm not talking about Everbridge problems. I mean, like in Northeast Utilities problems, people problems. People need to be familiar with how this system works. And if you don't use it once in a while, they become unfamiliar. The best practice, we've done this in several of our work groups, is we put it in as part of the routine, ongoing, daily business process so that they use it for some piece of information that is part of something they do every day. And so they get an Everbridge message, if not every day, once a week or once a month, or some regularity that it doesn't surprise them and they're not wondering, what is this, when it happens. And the other piece of it is it ensures when people don't get the message that they're going to say something because there's some information that they want and they knew was coming, as opposed to when something happens in sending it out, they don't know anything's happened, and so if they don't get the message, they don't know enough to ask about it because obviously they're unaware. So all I can say is practice. We drill, we exercise, we're very good. We're probably better at that of other things than we are with the Everbridge system in particular, but that's just us. What we do practice all of our emergency processes extensively. And then when something really does happen, lessons learned from that are even better than any exercise.
Thank you, Ed. Tracy, I'll pass that to you. Any best practices that you think folks should take away when they think about their hurricane preparedness?
I like to say training. One of the things we've been focusing on prior to this hurricane season is getting people trained on the Everbridge system. We have both the citizen portal and the employee portal. You can never have enough people trained. Here in the Emergency Operations Center, I'm not going to be here 24/7. I'm not going to be available 24/7. And not even a hurricane. If something else happens in the county, I may be out of town. So, we're getting people trained on this system to make sure they know how to use it so that, I have a backup, they have a backup, that person has a backup, so that more than one person knows how to use this system so that we can communicate during an event or preparation of an event.
Great, thank you. And Maureen, obviously same question to you. Anything that you think people should take away in terms of their preparedness?
Well, in a hospital setting, we need to really get out there the expectations of the hospital staff to let them know what the purpose and the importance of Everbridge actually is, and that we're sending out information for very, very specific purposes. Their accuracy, the accuracy of what their contact information is in Everbridge is extremely important so that we can contact them. And also with the Everbridge system, don't overuse it. Otherwise, it's going to, like anything else, lose its significance. So you have to sort of, pick and choose when you're going to send out this information. We were in almost like a constant mode, sending out multiple messages during Hurricane Sandy. And we realized, you know what, we'll meet every 2 hours. We had debriefings before, during, and after. And then after this entire event was over, we came back and we said, you know what, why are we sending out information when it hasn't changed? We should really just, come back and meet, but if nothing has really changed drastically, don't send out another announcement. Only when something has, if power's been restored to one of the sites, then obviously send it out to just people who are affected by it. Creating annual goals and objectives is something else we did, and constantly be open for other people to join onto the emergency agency administration team, just so that more eyes and ears are better as things like this happen.
Great, wonderful. And Claudia, I'll forward that to you as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I think everyone touched upon many different aspects. And honestly, I don't have a lot to add, really. Just a few items to actually summarize, I think, what many of the panel members would all agree. The first is around, really managing the entire life cycle of the critical event, so that you're, everyone mentioned planning, so that you have a plan that covers, when the warning is upon us for a hurricane, the risk assessment, the response, the management, and the resolution and recovery of the event as well. All of those phases require communication and planning, and I think that's key, and the panel members, all touched upon that. And then, finally, just one tidbit is around focusing on the clarity of message. And a simple rule that we leverage all the time for emergencies using, the 3-3-30 rule. 3 short sentences that convey, 3 key messages in 30 words or less. If you can adhere to that, you can be better prepared, and you will know that your messages will be, very concise and understood. But, that's what I have to add. I want to personally thank all the panel members for joining today. It's been, really, really helpful to hear all the different perspectives on hurricane preparation.
Absolutely, and I'll echo that sentiment. So unfortunately, as I think most folks have realized, we've run out of time today. So thank you to our panelists for a great session, and to all of our attendees who were able to join us today. So just a reminder, if you missed any part of the webinar, be sure to look for the slides on the Everbridge blog. And you'll also receive an email with a link to the recording and the slides in the coming days. If you haven't already, please take a moment to follow us on Twitter at Everbridge and join our group on LinkedIn, Everbridge Incident Management and Emergency Notification Professionals. For those of you interested in requesting a demo of the new Everbridge system, please visit everbridge.com/request-demo. And for those of you interested in learning more about the ACP, you can reach out to us or to Ed, or I've included their web address up there as well. So once again, thank you all for your participation in today's Expert Insights webinar, Hurricane and Storm Preparedness, a Best Practices Expert Panel Discussion. So we hope to see you all again online soon. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.